Welcome everyone to tonight's masterclass about women's menstrual cycles. If we haven't met before, I know there's a couple people that I think I haven't met in person or online. If we haven't met before, my name is Kat. Welcome to tonight's class. I'm super excited to be sharing this topic with you. It's been something that I have been diving deeper into over the last, it will be like 10, 11 months, I'd say. And the deeper I go down this rabbit hole, the more it changes my life. And the more I'm like, oh my God, I have to share about this. And the more I've started sharing about it, the more people are coming to me and asking me like, hey, can you tell me more? Like, I see you post about this stuff. So tonight's is kind of just going to be like a quick intro into the menstrual cycle, what the 4 phases are about, what your different cycles are all about. We're not going to be going super into depth, but it's just hard to fit a lot into 60 minutes. So I'm going to try to give you as much value as possible. I'm going to warn you, for those of you who are live, I'm probably going to cut out at some point because I live in rural Golden, BC, and my Wi-Fi is crap, excuse my language. So I'm probably going to cut out at some point. And if you're watching the recording, there's probably going to be some breakups in the book. It's just going to happen. That's also another good thing that if you guys have the cameras on, because then I can see when I've actually frozen, because you guys will be frozen and I'll have a bit of feedback as to when I kind of need to just be quiet to be able to then pick up where we were left off. So first thing that I wanted to kind of quickly mention is I would absolutely love for this to be interactive. So, use the chat function. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll open it up also for questions at the end of the class. And if I'm asking any questions, you can reply to the questions, or if you're having a big aha moment, share it in the chat. I've done one of these masterclasses before for a small group, and the chat went wild so many times when we went into the different phases and kind of what some of the things are, or even when I was talking about some crazy stuff about research, people were like, oh my God. So yes, please give me some feedback. It helps me make this more lively. And this is really funny. This topic, I'll share a little bit about my story. This is literally my whole life is around my cycle now. I plan everything around my cycle. I originally planned the date for this masterclass to be on the first day of my follicular phase, which we'll learn about in a moment, only to then have my period 4 days late. So today is actually my first day of my cycle, my first day of my bleed, my menstrual cycle, which I'm super low energy. So I was for the last couple of hours, I was in there just nurturing myself, being okay, I need some energy for this class. So I literally plan everything in my life around this these days. And I'm really excited to share with you guys a little bit more on this topic. But women's health, the menstrual cycle, women's hormones has been something that I started to dive deeper into when I was 25. I had been on hormonal birth control for 11 years at that point, and I was just about to go and travel the world with my now husband, and we were living in Austria. And because I had been on hormonal birth control my whole life, I was like, oh, I don't want a period whilst we're traveling. So what can I do to not get a period? Because periods are bad. So I went and got a hormonal IUD. And this is really where my journey towards holistic health got started. No one warned me about any of the possible side effects or what could happen. I was never told any of it. I started on hormonal birth control when I was, my internet connection is unstable. Okay, I don't know when I'm quick. Okay, Kali, you're my person. I can see you in the corner. So if I don't see you, I know that I've broken up. But so I ended up getting a hormonal IUD because I wanted to skip my periods because I didn't know any better, and no one had ever educated me around my menstrual cycle and the importance of it. And as we started traveling around New Zealand, I started to become heavily depressed, heavily depressed. And I didn't understand what was going on for me. When the way I was brought up, mental health was never something to talk about. My mom still to this day thinks that psychologists are con artists. So that was kind of my upbringing. So I had no idea about mental health, depression, nothing. I didn't understand what was going on with me or why I was feeling so sad. I mean, I should have been living the dream, traveling around New Zealand in a van, but I was a mess. And around that time is when I came across yoga and I started practicing yoga more regularly. And as I was practicing yoga, I started to notice that that heaviness started to lift and I started to feel lighter. And I created a really beautiful bond with my yoga teacher. So I decided to open up to her about what was going on with me. And she was the first person to tell me, like, hey, I think it might be depression. And it just blew my mind. So then she says, like, yeah, it's common that yoga can sometimes help you alleviate depression because, you know, we're working with your body and everything. So when I realized that that was going on, I was like, okay, I got to become a yoga teacher. Like, I got to share this practice with others to help them understand what the possibilities are in our holistic health. Because up until then, I had never even looked into holistic health. So that was kind of my way in. And I picked up a holistic nutrition book. And in that book was the first time that I read about hormonal birth control and its side effects. At that point, I was 26 years old, maybe even 27. I think I was actually 27 when I read that book. And I was like, oh my God. Like, why do we not get taught about this? Like, I remember especially one thing reading about the pill, which blew my mind. And if you're on the pill, totally okay. Like, you know, each to their own. I just wish that I would have known the side effects back when I was younger so that I could have made an informed decision. So when I read in that book that hormonal birth control literally changes the way that you smell your partner, and that if you come off hormonal birth control, that you might not even fancy your partner anymore, I was like, what? And then I started reading more into it and the fact that a common side effect of hormonal birth control can be depression. I was like, oh my God. Like, then I put one and one together. Like, up until then, I didn't really know what was causing my depression. So but I would like to say that this was the place where I then decided to get my hormonal IUD taken out and become clean. No, I didn't. Because I was so afraid of what my body would be like without hormonal birth control. Because one of the reasons why I went on it back when I was 16 or 17, I can't remember exactly, was that my whole life I had suffered with extremely heavy and painful periods, to that point where on my first day of my bleed, I couldn't go to school. I was like, my mood swings were horrible. My skin was horrible. And I was so afraid at 27 years old that I would have to go through that same thing again. And I wasn't ready for it. So instead, I started being, okay, like, what can I do to kind of balance out these bad hormones that are in my body and kind of, you know, neutralize it? So that, you know, like that was my journey. And back in 2018, I finally decided to go off hormonal birth control. And luckily, it actually ended up being a very smooth transition. And I know that it's because of the supplementation that I was getting back then, or like still doing. But at that, I'm not going to talk about this right now. But then the other way, how I kind of started to learn about our menstrual cycle and the different phases, and the fact that there are even different phases. Like, let me know in the chat if you knew that we have 4 phases to our cycle. Like, drop a 1 in the comment if you knew that before the call tonight. Like, I didn't. I was 31 years old when I found out that my menstrual cycle has 4 different phases. Like, I knew about my period and I knew about ovulation, but I didn't know that there was like 2 other phases. I'm glad to see that some people knew beforehand already. Like, that's awesome. You knew more than I did. But it was last year or back in 2020, I can't remember, 2021. No, it was at the start of 2021 when I started working with a life and mindset coach, and she was helping me with my business. And I was at a phase where I was so burnt out from hustling and I didn't want to continue in that hustle mentality. And I told her about it. I was like, you know, I like hustle. Oh, my internet connection is unstable, but you guys were still moving, so I should be okay. Hopefully. Yeah, Kai, I love you. Thank you for giving me feedback. But where was I? Okay, so how I discovered it. Yes. So I was telling my life coach that I was so sick and tired of this hustle burnout. And she was like, oh, have you ever heard about human design? I was like, no. Drop a 2 in the chat if you know about human design. It's a little side topic here quickly, because it's part of the journey. So I started learning more about human design, no 2, so no one knows about it. that's cool. I know Kali and Cairo do because they're part of my team. But I found out that I'm a projector, which means that I'm actually a type of person that needs lots of rest, and I'm not doing good with hustling. Oh, I think I might have frozen.
So back to the story, I found out about my human design, and I found out that I'm a projector, meaning that I actually need to rest loads, and I'm not very good with hustling. I need to take time for self-care, and that's really important to me. But then when I told a friend about that, she was like, oh, have you heard about cycle syncing and learning about your cycle and leveraging different phases of your cycle? And I was like, no, I haven't. So she recommended me a book called In the Flow, and that's where everything started. And the more I learned, the more I was mind blown. And I started to small steps at a time, implement what I was learning into my own life. And it all started with awareness first, and just kind of checking in with what phase of my cycle am I in? How am I feeling? How am I meant to be feeling? How can I leverage my superpowers? And it has grown from there. And like I said, at this point now, I'm literally at a place in my life where everything in my life gets like planned around my cycle. So I just want to give a bit of a backstory so you guys can understand where I came from and why I'm so passionate about this. So I've got a little slideshow prepared, because that's how organized I am these days. And then I just want to take you guys through it. I can't put it on full screen because then I lose you guys and the chat and everything. So I'll have to just deal with it this way. So today we're going to be talking about our menstrual cycle. And for many women, like, it can feel like such a curse. Like what I was saying to you earlier, when I was young, it felt like a curse. Like, feel free to let me know and like drop a 5 in the chat if that was you. Like if you, or even maybe even to this day, you feel like your menstrual cycle is a curse. You just sometimes, you just like hate it. Like, oh, it's that time of month, a period. Oh. Like that's how we are so like made to feel. Yep, we can see a couple of like a 5 in the chat. We feel so ashamed about our cycle, rather than empowered by our bodies and the fact that we're literally creating miracles. And our cycle is incredible, and leveraging the different phases is incredible. And something that is so fundamental to us, our biochemistry, our reproductive system, our menstrual cycle, is just twisted into this curse that we must hide or deal with, rather than celebrate and use it to our advantage. Talia said, I've always felt like, why couldn't we just get it when we wanted kids, then shut it off again? Yep. I've definitely felt the same way. Like 100%. But before I kind of dive deeper into the 4 different phases, I'd actually love to share a couple of things with you guys. For instance, did you know that being out of sync with your female chemistry can weaken your thyroid? It can weaken your ovaries, your livers, your adrenals, your immune system, your digestion. Like, those are all pretty important things. And they're pretty vital to our health, which is actually why some people call our menstrual cycle our 5th vital sign, because it can tell us so much about where we're at in our health. And it's the irregularities or the lack of our periods can tell us so much. Like for me, instance, like I understand why my period was 4 days late, because I've just moved towns, I've gone through a bunch of stress, and it's impacted my body, and I understand it. And I can think about it instead of just being like, oh my God, why is my period late? I can be like, what's happened in my life? Why could this be happening? And, there's so many women, myself included, who try to function like men in this world. We try to function according to the 24-hour clock. We believe that we should have the same amount of energy and the same amount of creativity day in and day out. Like, drop a 7 in the chat if you feel like you should always just kind of have the same amount and perform the same way. Like, if that's something that you feel is like a belief of yours, and you're almost ashamed when, 100%, 7. Like, we just feel like that's kind of what we're meant to be doing. But when we truly look within us and we check in with our inner knowing, we know that that's not the case. Because our energy is not meant to be static day in and day out, week in, week out. Our productivity is tied to our menstrual cycle. And depending on where we're at and what phase we're in is how our energy is going to show up. So it's completely different to men who work on that 24-hour clock. Also, something else that I wanted to share with you guys that was one of the statistics that blew my mind was, did you know that 75% of people with an autoimmune disease are women? 75%. Wild. And yet our symptoms are kind of not really taken seriously because medicine just doesn't know enough about our bodies and our health, and it just kind of brushes it off. And the other thing that absolutely blew my mind was, did you know that most scientific research on different diets and different exercise has been done on men or menopausal women? Like when you hear things about intermittent fasting, it's so good for you. Yeah, it's good for men or menopausal women, but not if you're on your cycle. But like the reason why we don't get considered in research is because of the change of our hormones, and it's unreliable. Messed up. It's so messed up. Like when you realize that our culture's foundational health research has largely excluded us, then it's so easy to grasp why our health issues are so misunderstood and misdiagnosed. It's just wild. So once you start to learn to really live in sync with your cycle and treat it for this miraculous thing that it is, you can see some really cool side effects, like finding yourself building more energy, not just draining it. You can feel really good about who you are. You can feel good in your body all month long, not just when you're ovulating. You can feel powerful and confident, and you can have time work for you instead of twisting yourself around for time. Like that's been huge for me, to really learn to how to leverage my productivity and my different strengths and use them to my advantage. And you'll feel less stressed and you'll get more done. It's like, who doesn't like that? It sounds like pretty awesome to me. So then I'm going to quickly stop this share here. Normally, when we talk about cycle syncing, the first phase of our cycle is our menstrual phase. And it's literally the first day of your cycle is the first day of your bleed. That's like the day one, and then you kind of count all the way up until your first day of your next period. But for today's masterclass, simply the way that the phases build on each other, I'm actually going to start with the follicular phase, which is the phase that starts after a menstrual phase, and you'll see kind of how they build on each other. Just for simplicity of teaching you about this, but normally it would be the first phase is your menstrual phase, and the first day of your cycle is the first day of your bleed. But let's look at this first phase tonight, your creative bloom, aka your follicular phase. So this phase can last anywhere between 7 to 10 days. If you have a classical 28-day cycle, it would be the 7 days. And during this phase, it's also called our inner spring. So you'll really kind of, as we go through these phases, you'll be able to draw the synchronicities between the different seasons in life and our seasons as women, because we're cyclical in nature and the world works cyclically. So this first phase is tied in with our inner spring. You'll often hear people call this the inner spring. And just like in spring, you crave fresh, vibrant, light food. Your body, when you're in your follicular phase, craves those kind of foods. So you want to think about lots of fresh vegetables. And if you think about how you're cooking your food, once we eat like light cooking methods, like sauteing and things like that, so it doesn't get too much processed. This is also just like with, in spring, when you kind of feel like you come out of your like hermit phase of the winter, you feel like, oh, I'm just ready. Like it's a new start. It's the same with your follicular phase, where it's a great time to start new things. It's a great time to start daydreaming and plant those metaphorical seeds of your future. Like ask yourself those big questions. What do I want to do in life? Where do I want to go in life? What do I want to achieve? And be open to new experiences. You're like, whether it's saying yes to more networking events, whether it's saying yes to doing fun new adventures with your partner. For instance, like in your love life, during this phase, you want to go on a trip with your partner and experience something new, whether it's like an actual trip, like a weekend getaway, or maybe go to a restaurant you've never been to before, do something you've never done before. This is also the time when you're more open to trying new things sexually, apparently. So this is a great time. I'm just like diving into all the phases. There's no TMI here. Like literally anything in life, you're more open to new things during this 7 days. And also when you think about your mind, during this phase, your creative problem solving abilities are at its peak. So if you know that you have a really big mentally taxing task ahead of you, have a look at where you're at in your cycle and see if you can maybe push it forward so that you kind of work on it in your follicular phase, because that is your strength during that time. So really starting to think like, okay, I know I really got to figure this out, but I'm currently on my last days of my luteal phase, my period's about to come. So in a week, I know I'm going to be in my follicular phase, so maybe I can just deal with it then, because I know that that's when my brain works the best for problem solving. And just like with spring, you know, you kind of come out of your winter hermit, you'll also feel your physical energy rise during this time, meaning it's a great time to try new physical challenges, do lots of cardio. Great time in your cycle to do lots of cardio exercises these 7 days, because your body just really thrives on that. Another thing that I haven't actually don't have on these slides, but learning to move your body according to your cycles can benefit you, because sometimes having that rigid workout regime where you're just following the same thing and you're doing the same things week in and week out, you can actually do yourself more damage. Like you can actually gain more weight if you're doing crazy cardio or crazy weightlifting, for instance, during your period, because you're not meant to be moving in that way. So it's really learning to move in sync with your cycle. So during this first phase, it's all about cardio and trying new things, like go to a dance class, do a vinyasa class, so when it comes to yoga, do a spin class, anything kind of that is like cardio and it's going to get your heart pumping is really good for this phase. And then the next phase, your sensual abundance, aka your ovulation phase. Most women love this phase. It's their favorite phase. And I don't blame them, because there's a lot of magic in this phase, but there's also a lot of magic in all the other phases. So this is the shortest phase of our cycle. It lasts anywhere between 3 to 5 days. And I know it seems like a really short period of time, but during those 3 to 5 days, you're literally like Superwoman. Like you can do anything. You can fill your schedule to the rim and just do everything you want. Like you'll just have energy flowing out of you. You're literally unstoppable. And if you think about the foods that you want to, so this is connected to your inner summer. So what kind of foods do we want to eat in summer? We don't have no time to cook in the summer because we're out having fun, like hanging out with our friends, going for a paddle, going hiking, going climbing, mountain biking, whatever it is for you. Like you don't have time to cook, and you're probably craving more fresh fruits and vegetables. So those are the food that is really great for you during this phase. If you're ever planning to do a juice cleanse, try to do it on your ovulation phase, because your body will actually thrive on that during that. If you try to do a juice cleanse whilst you're menstruating, you'll kill yourself. Like not actually, but you'll feel like you'll kill yourself. So just like in summer, you know, you have that zest for life. During this phase, you also notice that you just want to do things. Like you just want to do whatever. You just want to be active. And you also have a stronger libido in the sexual life. This is a great time to kind of just tell your partner exactly what you want. And this kind of comes in with what I have on the slide next, is that your communication skills when you're ovulating are like on freaking fire. Like there's just something about you that you're just able to communicate exactly what you need, and it will get received really, really well. So whether it's sexually or just in your relationship in general, also if you are working towards a raise in your job, you want to ask for your raise during your ovulation phase, because there's just something about it that it's going to be received in a different way, and you're just able to communicate it in a more understanding way. So ideally, I like to do these kind of masterclasses when I'm ovulating, because I'm better at communicating, but sometimes that's just not how it goes. And also collaboration. So working in teams, connecting with other people, and just really using each other's strengths. Oh, I think I might have cut off. Dun, dun. Hold on. Oh, and I'm back. Okay, perfect. Yay. I don't know exactly where it cut out, but I was saying communication and collaboration in general with all the people around you, your partner, your team, your friends. This is a really strong time. Also, it's true that we have a special glow about us when we're ovulating. Because if you think about nature, it's the time when we're most fertile. So we're literally giving the signals out to the world. I am ready to be impregnated. So there's this glow about you that you literally feel like Superwoman. You will feel more sexier yourself. You'll feel more confident in your body. You'll feel more energized. You'll feel more outgoing. This is literally like those 3 days, hack them full. Go network, go have fun, have parties, do whatever you crave. You'll have energy for all of it. And when it comes to working out, like this is again, you'll have energy to burn. So choose those high impact group workouts or heat sessions. Like go to a boot camp style class, like go to the gym, do a heat class in the gym using the weights. Really just allow yourself to exert yourself. Also, another interesting fact about ovulation, if you're someone that is competing in any sort of sport, if you can have your competitions whilst you're ovulating, you'll show up as your best self. Like this is the time where you'll have your personal best is when you're ovulating, because you're just Superwoman during these days. Like it's just, I know it's short, and I know some people are like, oh, I wish I could have my ovulation the whole time. I get it, but you'll learn there is magic to the other phases as well. So then the next phase, why is this not wanting to, there we go, is honoring your inner landscape, the luteal phase. This is the longest phase of your cycle, and it's on average 14 days long, and it actually almost has like 2 parts to it. So the first 7 days of your luteal phase is almost like an extended ovulation phase, where you'll have very similar characteristics as in your ovulation phase. So you can kind of extend that socializing and working all that magic for a little bit longer. And then the second 7 days of your luteal phase are actually more the time where you're going to be starting to prepare for your menstrual bleed, and you're going to start to kind of tune in. And if you compare this to autumn, your inner autumn, autumn is the time when we start to want to nest. We want to start to be with ourselves, start practicing more self-care and things like that. So the second half of your luteal phase, you'll really start to notice that. Also, the second half of your luteal phase is not only when we get most of our PMS symptoms. Also, just because PMS is common doesn't mean that it's necessary. It's not actually natural to have crazy PMS. And if you're able to really become in sync with your cycle and learn to naturally balance your hormones, you're not going to be experiencing PMS. Those mood swings and cramps and bloating, it doesn't need to happen. So it's pretty powerful. When I learned about that, I was like, what? You could talk about it as if it's like normal, but there's actually things that you can do about it. And I was just telling Jess this because she commented on my post today, and she was like, oh, you know, like I always have these cravings just upon my period. And I told her, emphasize on foods that are rich in B vitamins, because they're going to help you starve off those sugar cravings, so that you don't feel like you need to eat all the sweets, all the chocolate. Chocolate's actually good for you in certain phases, but you don't have to be, oh, and I've been cutting in and out, I guess, because I saw some hands waving. Hopefully you haven't missed too much, but get your B vitamin rich foods in when you're in your second half of your luteal phase to help you starve off those sugar cravings. But like I mentioned, this phase has a slowing down and channeling our energy into nurturing our deepest relationship, which is often our relationship with ourselves. This is the time where you can complete anything you've started. This is where you want to bring projects to an end. You want to tidy up loose ends, both mentally and physically. This is personally my favorite phase because it has 2 parts. You know, it has that extended ovulation phase where I feel like Superwoman and I can do anything. But then it has that second part to it where I just feel like I can stuff done. Like this is the time when I get down to work and I finish things. Like I just get stuff done. I always tell the story. I hate doing my taxes. It's like such a chore for me. And normally it's taken me like 4 hours, and I like hate every minute of it. But this year I was like, okay, I got to get my taxes done. I know that this is something that I'm going to thrive on when I'm in my luteal phase. So I'm just gonna do it in my luteal phase. I'm gonna plan to get through all of my taxes because I work for myself, so there's a lot to consider. And I literally sat down for 2.5 hours. I was thriving. I was like, this is so much fun. Oh, I love doing my taxes. I did my taxes and my husband's taxes in 2.5 hours, and I loved every minute of it. So it's like so crazy to say, but it's just about that completing certain tasks. That's what you're good at in this phase. So when you are daydreaming and starting new projects in your follicular phase, in your inner spring, now you want to kind of bring them to completion. And the reason behind it is also that you want to prepare for your menstrual phase, where you're actually going to be starting to rest and prepare to not do too much. So you want to complete whatever needs to be completed beforehand. And your body is literally meant to do that. Isn't that wild? Like nature is pretty cool if you start to actually learn about it. And when we look at the food preparation here, is we want to start thinking about like warmer foods. Like what kind of foods you crave in autumn? Like some baked vegetables, like baked. Oh my God, what's the word? I can't think of it. Roasted. Roasted foods are really good for you during this phase. So again, similar to what's happening in autumn, like the kind of like root vegetables are really, really great for you. Also have B vitamins and cruciferous greens as well. And then when it comes to working out, oh, I hope I'm back. When it comes to working out during the first part of this phase, you'll still have lots of energy to burn. So you want to use that for strength training. This is literally like when you want to be on the weights all the time in the gym. This is really great time for that. Also intense yoga is really good. And then during the second half of the phase, you want to start scaling back your activities and do lighter things like walking, Pilates, in yoga, and really just help your body prepare for that intense releasing of the uterine lining, which is your menstrual cycle. And I know we haven't gone too deep into hormones and things like that, and it's because, again, time, because I'm really mindful of not, otherwise we could be here for 2 hours. But then let's go to our final phase of our cycle, which is actually our first phase. And I love that sometimes it gets called, hear the call of the wise woman, your menstrual phase. And there's a reason why we call it this, because during your menstrual phase, you're actually the most connected to your intuition. So this is the phase to really start asking yourself those hard questions. Am I where I want to be? Is my career heading where I want to go? Are my goals still where I actually want to be heading? What do I want in life? Are my relationships satisfying me? Like if you're into affirmation cards or if you're into tarot cards, when you're menstruating is a great time to do these kind of things, because you're just so tuned in to your inner wise woman, aka your intuition. And this phase lasts anywhere between 3 to 7 days. And during this time, it's our inner winter. So we want to focus on foods that add nutrients. So we want to add protein, we want to add good fats, we want to add low glycemic index vegetables and fruits. And low glycemic index basically just helps stabilize your blood sugar. Also, when you think about the kind of foods that you crave in winter, it's soups, it's stews, it's more hearty food. So make sure that you give your body what it needs during this phase. Not a great time to go on a juice cleanse. Worst time ever. Don't do it. I've tried it once. Didn't work out too well. And during this phase, many of us crave that deep rest. Like, I don't know if Katrina is still on here. She's having an Epsom salt bath and she's like And I was like, she told me that she was on her menstrual phase. I was, yeah, girl, that's what you want to be doing. You don't have to have your camera on. You are excused. Oh, what's it? I can see the chat came up. What happened here? Sure am. Yep, I know you are. So we want to have that rest. We want to nurture ourselves. We want to have that quiet and that cozy time. If you can even kind of get, like if you're living with a partner, if you can get your partner to leave you alone for a day, it's really, really great time to just be with yourself and really tune in and nurture yourself instead of trying to focus on everyone else. And also the way that your brain is wired during this time, it's really great for analysis and review. So again, if we think about, you know, the spring where we started our creative projects, and then when we got really into them during our summer, and then we brought them to completion in our inner fall, now we want to kind of look at them like, okay, what did I do? Did I perform the way I wanted to perform? How can I be better? What can I do differently? You're taking that time for analysis and review. And it's the same for, like I said, with your goals and stuff, because you really have that intuition. So you can ask yourself those questions. Where do I want to go in life? Like, is this where I actually want to be going? So make sure you plan time for this. And then your energy will be at its lowest in the beginning of your period. So consider napping a sport. I don't know if any of you saw my post today, but I literally napped today because I was like, my period came on. I was out for a walk with my friend and I was like, I'm going to have a nap when we get back. That's going to be my sport. And then later on, you'll be able to have more energy. You'll notice it rise again. So you can focus on lighter exercises such as walking, yin yoga, kundalini yoga, mat pilates. Again, really just honoring yourself where you're at. Also, another really cool thing to know about your cycle phases. So during your follicular and your ovulation phase, your body burns less calories naturally. But if you're doing the hardcore exercise, the extra calories that you burn are actually going to be burned. It's not going to be like turned into fat and stuff like that. Again, this is not my full area of expertise, so I might say things that don't make sense, but I'll try to break it down as simple as possible. And then during the second half of your phase, so your luteal phase and your menstrual phase, your body actually naturally burns more calories. So that's also why you can have those heavier foods. But because your body is naturally burning more calories, if you then go and exercise like crazy, your body is going to go into deficit and feel like, oh, we're going to go into starvation mode. I got to store all this fat. So it's really, really interesting how, like, even though we're burning naturally more calories, we also shouldn't be exercising as much because our body really needs all of that because of the intense cycles that it's going through. Do we have any questions so far? You can come off mute. You can drop them in the chat. I feel like I just went at you like, oh! There's so much, and I feel like there's so much more that I could have covered, but it's hard to kind of fit it all into a short period of time. There is one more thing that I want to share with you guys. If there's no questions, I can't see any questions right now, but you might still be writing it up. But I'll share my screen real quickly again. If this does fascinate you and you're like, oh my God, this is like, there's so much I want to learn, so much I didn't know, then I am launching a course coming Monday. It's called Become Besties with Your Cycle. It's a 4-week course. Oh, I see the questions coming. I'm going to get back to them in a moment. And so the course that I'm launching on Monday is going to have 4 weeks, and each week the time commitment is going to be anywhere between like 1 to 3 hours. You'll have access to all of the material throughout your life. And during the first week, we're going to go deeper into what is cycle thinking. So really learning about how you can start to cycle think, why it's beneficial. We're going to dive deeper into our hormones, the different hormones that come into factor when we go through our different phases, and like how they act in each phase, and how you can really support your hormones during each phase. And also dive deeper, like which hormones are maybe causing the problems, aka estrogen. And then week 2 and week 3, we'll take a deeper dive into the 4 different phases. And we'll go into what kind of exercise you should be doing during the phase, what kind of food, what rituals, you can be doing, and food like way deeper than what we covered today, exercise, same thing. Also like how you can manage your work during the different phases, what your love life is during the different phases, how you can take a leverage of that and learn more, and then what your inner strengths are during the different phases. And week 4, we'll talk about supplementation and why it's so important for our hormone health and the different kinds of supplements that are out there that can really benefit you. And we'll also learn a little bit more about our other feminine superpowers, because this is something that I'm also super passionate about. And then it will all be held in a private Facebook group where you can connect with other participants. And I'll have a weekly Q&A session. I think it's probably going to be on a Sunday. I haven't decided yet. So anytime you kind of work through your course material, you can like drop the questions in a special post, and then we'll go over it. And you can be live as well and ask questions. So then the investment is 222 Canadian. I don't know if I have any US people on here on the line. I think that ends up, yeah, I know, Kyle, I see you. It's about 200 US, I believe. But because you guys are live on this, or you're watching the replay, you're basically part of the masterclass, there is a 10% discount. So for those in Canada, it would be down to 200 plus GST, and then the US, it ends up being like, I don't know how much. I can't do the math. And then I see a couple of you who are either part of my team or my Juice Plus customers. You guys get a 20% discount because I love you. But that's basically it. So if you have any other questions, send me a message afterwards. I'm really excited to launch this course. It's such a labor of love that I've put a lot of time into, lots of different books, hours and hours of research, and I can't wait to share all of it with you. Okay, Abby, thank you. I'll explain again with the calories. So the first 2 phases of our cycle are follicular phase and our ovulation phase. Our body naturally burns less calories, meaning we need a little bit less food, but also if you're working out, you're actually burning the fat, and you're going to see more like beneficial results, versus then in your luteal phase and your menstrual phase, your body is naturally burning more calories, hence why you should be eating more of those hearty foods that give you calories back. But if you're working out heavily, like crazy cardio stuff, then your body kind of goes into the deficit, and it thinks it's in starvation, and it's going to store all of the calories kind of as fat. Again, I'm not fully explaining this correctly because but it's the basics. How do you get rid of the gassy and the bloating? There's many things depending on kind of what is causing it. I'm going to go deeper into this with like the course, which I know you're part of, Jess. So Jess is already committed to it. So you'll learn all about that kind of in the course, because there's different foods that can help, and also different other practices that can really help with the gassiness and the bloating and the moodiness, and even with your skin and things. And then Carly has asked, which cycle syncing do you keep track like on a physical calendar, or what does it look like? My favorite app, and it does cost a couple of dollars, but it's been created by the lady who wrote the In the Flow book, and the app looks like this. It's called My Flow. It's a couple dollars, really not expensive, but it's my favorite tracking, because you see kind of like a calendar and see the different colors. It literally tells you kind of like what phase you're into. Right now, it's the 14th, so it's just day of my period. And then it kind of tells me the other things. And then there's some other cool things in this app as well. Like you can basically go into my cycle phases, and then it will tell me like in my menstrual phase, kind of briefly about what's going on with my hormones, also my food, my exercise and stuff like that. It's very, very basic, but you can learn about that. And one of my other favorite things about this app is like in here, you can sync with your partner. So your partner can get emails letting him know what phase of your cycle you're in and how he can nurture you. It's amazing. So if you're new to this, I highly, highly recommend that app. Like I said, it costs a couple of dollars, but it's a favorite one. I've used different ones over the years, but this is kind of my favorite one so far. Do we have any other questions that I can answer? This has been fun. I love doing this. This is like my new thing. well, not so new anymore. It's been a couple of months, but okay. Well, I'll stop the recording.
I feel like
Yes.
I partially have a question, but I was like trying to figure out how to type it, and I was like, I don't know. But anyways, yeah. So, I've just stopped my second form of IUD after being on like birth control for like ever and ever. And my partner and I are about to celebrate our 5-year anniversary, and I've started looking up information about how, because all of the information is super focused on like getting pregnant and like finding that window of like getting pregnant, and none of it literally none of it seems to talk about like, well, what about if you don't want to be on birth control and you also don't want to get pregnant? Like, what about that? Like, is that even an option? It basically just seems like it's like, no. Like, why would you even want to do that? So like, that's like been a crazy kind of fun thing. So the first thing I kind of found about it was taking my temperature daily,
Mm-hmm.
and then just kind of following a bit of that, and generally regular periods again. We haven't been, because like the whole idea that basically like you have a period or a time frame after
Mm-hmm.
you're like not susceptible essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But we still haven't like tapped into it because it's like kind of scary to think about, like, because condoms suck a lot, and they just like do, because like we haven't used them for ages because we've been on birth control, and then now we stopped it, but we want to be careful and mindful, and like it just sucks.
I totally feel you. And I was exactly where you are like 4 years ago. And I was having exactly the same conversations with my partner. And we personally decided to go back to condoms, and we just got used to it. And you can get some brands that are like not as bad. But and this is mainly because we're both a little bit terrified, but there is ways of natural fertility. I'm not really going to be going deeper into that in the course and stuff, because it's not my kind of expertise. But there's a lady who does it. Her name's Gemma Lee. She's on Instagram. I think it's like Wellsome Gemma Lee, and she talks about natural fertility. She's also a natural fertility coach. But yeah, the basal temperature is big. Also keeping track of your cervical fluid are all things like, if you combine them, can tell you where you're at in your cycle. And then of course things can still happen. And I know that's
that was also part of it. It's like, okay, we're at the level where like we're okay if it happens, we wouldn't prefer it to, but like, and then the whole idea of even trying to figure out like, well, what can you do, or like what are the kind of stuff, and is like, even just on basic research, there's just like, there's not information about it, and there's not like, it's weird. There's just like this whole kind of like, and I feel like that's kind of one of the points you started with, is just the idea of like a whole with connection and information about how could you maybe do something differently other than just pumping yourself with this like hormonal drug from like 14 essentially, like for many like quite young, or like quite often. So it's weird.
But that's like where we then can come in, and this is something that I eventually want to venture into, is really teaching teens about your cycle and the fact that it's magical. It's like you are a freaking superwoman, and the things that your body can create, and like different phases of your cycle, and really just having that educational tool and teaching young kids about it, and being like, hey, this is, you know, what's going on with your body, this is why it's happening, it's nothing to be ashamed of, it's actually something really powerful. I think that's like really where we need to be heading, but it just takes time. Yeah, Abby has just said as well, my friend does the temperature technique, the fertility awareness method. I think there's also like some kind of a brand does something around it, but I can't remember what they're called. But a friend of mine was using it. You get like a little like thermometer, but it's different than your normal one and stuff like that. But so there is ways. It's a bit of work, but once you get used to it, you'll get used to it, and then your body will thank you for it. Because also when you're on hormonal birth control, you don't actually have a real period, so you don't go through the actual hormones. So even though you're bleeding, it's actually not a real period. It's being created to give us the placebo effect and make us feel safe. Super effed up in my eyes. Like, why even bother? So everything that I talked to you about today, you can only really lean into if you're on your actual cycle and not on hormonal birth control. Okay. if there's no other questions, that's it from me. Thank you so much, guys, for being on here tonight with me. It's been so lovely having 13 of you with me here. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I absolutely, yeah. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to message me. If you're interested about the course, message me. Like I said, you guys get a bit of a discount. And yeah, there's a couple people already signed up, and they're super excited to connect with each other as well, and really just have that safe space to educate each other and share that journey. Because one thing I do want to bring home as well, like I know there's a lot that I taught you guys, but I don't want this to be another crazy thing that you're going to feel like you're going to have to stick to 100%, because if you don't, then you're not going to do well. No, go on a journey, start one piece at a time. Maybe it starts with the awareness. What phase am I in? How am I feeling? And then maybe the next phase, you'll start to play around with the food. And then maybe the next phase after that, you start playing around with your exercises, and just slowly build on it and allow your body to just embrace it. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.